Don't Miss by Aaron Lowrey and Weston Wofford. In this day and age, gun control is a hotly debated topic, with many proponents for and against it. However, the United States Constitution, and by extension the Bill of Rights, is a contract that must be upheld. The first guns were invented by Song China, soon after the advent of black powder. They were clunky and inaccurate, but aided the Song dynasty in its losing fight against the Mongols. Guns were then improved upon by the Islamic gunpowder empires, the Ottomans, Mughals, and Safavids, who used light artillery and advanced firearms to conquer the Middle East. Guns have since been used by nearly every nation, state, or imperial power to fight on the face of the earth. From the extremely expansive British Empire, which employed the Martini-Henry rifle to conquer parts of Africa, to the modern stateless society of Somalia, plagued by pirates, which primarily uses the Automat Kalashnikova 47 rifle due to its low price point and extreme durability. In the modern world, freedom is paramount. Human rights are key points emphasized by most every government, and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity are not only attainable, but more easily accessible than ever before. This air of freedom, however, can only be kept up by the arms and armor necessary to defend it from those who would do it harm. Without them, criminals, delinquents, felons, and all other manner of villains, both domestic and foreign, state and citizen, pose a threat to the very freedoms that the modern world stands for. Throughout history in the United States, leaders with controversial ideas have been assassinated quite often by hateful gun-wielding contrarians. Prime examples include Malcolm X, an advocate of the Nation of Islam who was assassinated by CIA infiltrators, Martin Luther King Jr., perhaps the most prominent voice of the civil rights movement, Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, a president and leader who would do anything to save the Union, John F. Kennedy, who handled the Cuban Missile Crisis with relative grace, William McKinley, and James A. Garfield. Furthermore, conditions in the U.S. have allowed organized crime syndicates to take root. In Prohibition-era Chicago, Al Capone led his gang on a rampage, swiftly ruining the city in events like the Valentine's Day Massacre, conducted with illegal military-grade Thompson machine guns. Today, drug cartels such as the Sinaloa cartel and the Los Zetas cartel use military-grade weapons and training to crush opposition to their trade, exporting their malicious products to almost the entire United States. While one person isn't going to stop all that organized crime, a community of people well versed in the art of effective self-defense could remove such a syndicate. Open and concealed carry licenses turn citizens into spare-time law enforcers, giving police a cutting edge on crime. However, without reasonable background and psychological checks, these licenses could turn into a hall pass for criminals. Surprisingly, thinkers such as Theodore Roosevelt, Mohandas Gandhi, Thomas Jefferson, and even the Dalai Lama approve of firearms in self-defense. Furthermore, authoritarian dictators on both the right and left sides of the political compass have consistently taken guns away from their people, from Stalin to Mao to Hugo Chavez to Hitler. They all unarmed their subjects. If the free world allows the same to happen, authoritarians can easily take over. In the U.S., the Brady Bill was a bill passed that mandated federal background checks for any firearm purchasers, and was enacted shortly after James Brady, the bill's namesake, was shot during an attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan. 1 year later, the federal assault weapons ban banned most semi-automatic rifles and all magazines with a capacity over 30 rounds. The National Firearms Act taxes the manufacture and sale of a vast array of firearms and explosives. Fearmongers on each side of the political debate intentionally create a haze over the topic of gun control. But certain individuals, such as Rand Paul, a Kentucky senator who once filibustered for 13 hours, take almost violent positions for freedom. Paul has threatened to oppose any further gun control legislation, and has stopped said legislation temporarily by doing so. On the other side, in early 2016, Senate Democrats filibustered for a whopping 15 hours to ban the sale of firearms to suspected terrorists. While such legislation is logical and safe, the right won't stand for it. In pop culture, violent video games give guns more exposure to people than they would normally have, and action movies are chock full of firearms for action. Modern culture doesn't even use realistic firearms, as the Israeli arms Desert Eagle, which fires a 50 caliber Action Express round with nearly 4 times the stopping power of a 45 ACP round fired from a Colt in 1911, is used in nearly 500 movies, but sees no action outside certain groups in the Israeli Defense Force. In addition, the Desert Eagle is inaccurate and unwieldy, and its 5-pound weight is better used as a club than a gun. In this day and age, without guns, freedom is impossible. There are too many enemies to the United States and its citizens to disregard them and not defend oneself and one's countrymen from all enemies, foreign and domestic. The freedoms enjoyed by the Founding Fathers must apply to all people, regardless of the technology available. If the Second Amendment only applies to muskets, then the First Amendment only applies to the Gutenberg Press. This type of misinformation must stop, and with mass education and proper gun ownership, it can, and guns can be accepted as the tools of defense that they are.